think overall we have to see it as a positive window. You know, if I'm honest, we would have liked to have got the Giannoulis done earlier, because we were working on that, well, for a long time, to be honest. So I was personally disappointed that he didn't get here quicker, especially knowing the challenges that we were going to have around actually then getting him registered. So, but you know, that's life. You need the other club to play ball and everything else, and that didn't happen as quick as we would have liked. But yeah, overall delighted. Neuland, I think, is a real interesting one for us as well. You know, it really strengthens our goalkeeping department. You know, obviously in the short term, but also hopefully maybe even in the midterm, because you know, if we look at Archie Mayer, who's out on loan, having a good season at Kings Lynn. You know, we've had Daniel Barden play a few minutes now, and it'll be important for his development to get out on loan probably next season. So I think, although Neuland's until the summer, it gives us a chance to have a good look at him to have a good look at us. So I think in terms of that midterm, you know, it really helps. And then, you know, of course, we've still got Michael McGovern, who we're talking to at the moment as well, about potentially extending his stay. So yeah, I think, you know, that was a real sort of good one for us. And then, like you said before, we haven't lost anyone, or no one that we didn't want to lose, which was really positive. You know, we had a little bit of pressure on one of them in particular, not the one which was in the media every day. But it was good to keep them, and hopefully now the window's shut, everyone can, you know, focus on the last 18 games and, you know, doing the best they can for Norwich and trying to fulfil the objectives that we want to achieve.
On Giannoulis and to a less extent Soto, but you had the first test of the new Brexit procedures. How did you find that with those two, and how big a change now you've gone through this window is it going to make in terms of your recruitment, you know, the different markets you might have to look at?
Yeah, it's massively challenging. Got to give huge credit to Sam Hall, who's our lawyer, and Andy Blofeld, who's obviously our long-standing club secretary, because, you know, they had to work through minefields of information, and to be honest, I still don't know how they sort of quite did it. But what it was with both Soto and Giannoulis, it was really good for us to go through that as a club and the individuals within the club, because now we're set up to be even stronger and better as we get towards the next window and the windows which are gonna follow that, because we've been through it. Because it is a extremely challenging process, terribly sort of time consuming, and I think it would put a lot of clubs off at almost first base, really. So I think you'd get there and it is sort of quite daunting. So for sure that's going to change that. But I think it's also going to change a lot of the markets. You know, we did a review of our squad of when we signed them, to find out which players, when we did sign them, would we be able to sign now under the current rules. And, you know, we wouldn't have been able to sign the likes of PAOK, Buendia, Stiepermann, Zimmerman, all these guys. And that's sort of quite scary, really. So that, you know, that's going to change the face of how we recruit and who we recruit. But what I would say is, with the problems with it, it also creates opportunities, and there's now new markets that we can go into, such as South America, which we've been working in for the last couple of years in preparation for Brexit. You know, we always knew this was coming down the road and it was going to change. So we've tried to be proactive and awake for that. And I think what it will do as well, I think it will create a bit like the Giannoulis deal, new opportunities, because, you know, whereas before maybe championship clubs or bottom end Premier League clubs could go fishing in certain markets, now they can't. You know, there's only so many clubs can take certain players. So I think, you know, with Giannoulis, we've got a fantastic player who probably normally we might not have got, but because we were awake and we were fully on top of what the rules were and what we could do, because he literally scraped through on the criteria. He had 15 points, which is what you have to have as a minimum to get in. And if he'd gone a couple more weeks and hadn't played for whatever reason, he could have dropped down to 14 points. That's how tight it was. So I think it's been really awake for them opportunities. And yeah, so far so good. And like I say, I'm really glad we've gone through it, because I think as a club that'll make us stronger for the next upcoming windows, rather than for the first time we have to do it as in the summer and, you know, everyone's going through what we've just been through.
Do you think, is there another dimension in terms of domestic players now? There's an extra premium on them, not only domestic UK developed players, but I mean, presumably there's like a settled status, so the overseas lads who've come in are now almost treated as a domestic type of player in terms of these new regulations. Does it place a higher premium on domestic talent?
Definitely, yeah. And I think if you take our players, you know, their value's gone up, you know, considerably with that one decision with Brexit and the new rules. So I think for our club in the short term, it's a big advantage. I think again it justifies the investment and time we've put in our academy. to create, our own homegrown players, because that's going to become vitally important. Because I think what will end up happening in the mid and longer term is, if we're not careful, I think you're going to have average settled players or homegrown players being worth an absolute premium, because clubs are going to struggle to sign players from other markets. And for us, that doesn't really work, having a 32-year-old journeyman on an outrageous sort of salary. So I think in the longer term for the game, I think it's going to cause a big problem, and that that's going to come down the track at some point. But I think for us, hopefully, how we've tried to organise our club in terms of younger players and different things, hopefully it'll actually end up being an advantage for us, because we should have massive more value on our players. And I think if you look at the success that Jamal's had at Newcastle, and Ben even more probably at Everton since last summer, I think it puts real premium on the ones that we've still got left here. That these are Premier League players, and these are players who can play in the top half of the Premier League and go and achieve sort of really good things, such as James Maddison. So hopefully that'll really help us. Not as much as we don't want to sell them, but we're also realistic, as at some point their journey will end here, whatever division we're in. And for us, then it's about maximising the best value that we can get.
How big an impact has the pandemic is having on you and your area of the football business?
Yeah, I think this is tough for everyone. I think it's the unseen, which people don't get realise. Both on a personal level, me and my wife work full time, and we've got a little boy that we're having to homeschool, and we're having to juggle that, and I think they're the things that people often forget with football. I think football's treated as if everyone lives on some island and has unbelievable money, and we don't have normal lives. It's the same for our players. Our players who've got children in school, they're homeschooling their children before they come here, because most of their wives are either working, or it's a mental strain of family members who are sat at home all day. You've got to try and sort of share the burden. So I think on that level, it's like for the whole world, it's tough. We know we're the lucky ones. At least we can continue to work, because that's better than the alternative of not working, for sure. And then, I think it's a daily challenge. We've had obviously some COVID cases. We've had, unfortunately, what comes with that, which is an element of panic, and should football continue, should it not, or whatever. And I think we navigated through that in the end really well. I'm very proud of everyone here that we've not had a game called off because of COVID. Where it would have been easy to call the Cardiff and Bristol game off, because we had enough cases where the league probably would have gone, you can have it off, and then obviously an investigation would have followed that. But we battled through it, because we were like, well, actually, we've got a good squad, we've got a big squad. We've got a duty to try and get through this. We're fortunate that the government has said that football needs to continue and given us permission to continue. We felt it was important to sort of continue through it. So I'm really, really proud of all the guys, how they've done that. Fair play to all the people here who've set up all the protocols and making our environment as safe as it can possibly be. And touch wood, we're sort of navigating it through it on that quite well. We just got to make sure that we, get through the next sort of 3 months of the season, and then hopefully in the summer the world starts to look a better place anyway, and hopefully then everyone can sort of start getting back to normal.
Specifically in terms of the drag on finances, no fans, and we know how important that part of your revenue pie is to have fans at Carrow, 27,000 every other home game. Does that now make it even more imperative from the financial standpoint, and a self-sufficient club, that you need to get promoted this season?
No, I don't think so. I think our aim is to get promoted, because we always thought we've got a good squad. We've got a top manager that would give ourselves a chance this year. But it's not the pressure of we have to get promoted. We want to get promoted, of course. We've put ourselves in a good position to have a good go at that, at least. The finances is a disaster, because what's happened for every business and club, maybe unless you sell PPE or food, it's had a massive damaging effect. And what probably upsets me most is that's slowing down some of the progress that we can be making, because whereas we sell players last summer for an unbelievable amount of money, that goes into a black hole that's been created through COVID, and the fact that we've got to give season ticket rebates and all them rebates and TV rebates and all them things, and that's a little bit annoying, to be honest. But at the same time, we have to take pride as a whole club and everyone who works within it, that we've not made a COVID related redundancy. We've battled on through it. We've not had to go and, beg, borrow and whatever money off people. We're sort of managing our way through it. But is it annoying? Yeah. Does it hurt a little bit? Definitely. But it's life, and let's be lucky. We're fortunate. We've still got a business standing. If anything, the business is probably thriving at the moment in terms of, on the pitch, how well the sort of team are doing. We just got to keep doing that. If it ends up in promotion, brilliant. If it doesn't, it doesn't. We know, who we are and what we are. We've got no divine right to get promoted, and there's no pressure on Daniel, myself, or the players to get promoted. From the financial point of view, the pressures that we put on ourselves to try and be the best we can be, and if that ends up being enough to get promoted, brilliant. If it doesn't, that's all right. We dust ourselves off and we'll have another go next year.
Obviously, I was going to come around to this topic, but you touched on it in your first answer. Reading between the lines, and the Buendia Arsenal thing was probably just the speculation that you get, sadly, with the social media element now in play. But was there any interest then in Todd or Max interest, as you would define it, in January?
Yeah, the only interest in any of our players was in Max, which ironically was the only one which didn't get out in the press, which was nice, because it shows that's often how it works. Actually, when something's happening, it isn't on some 12-year-old social media account. It's often when it is on a 12-year-old social media account, it's rubbish. Even though we have to answer questions all January about. But this 12-year-old in Essex has definitely said he's seen Arteta at Buendia's house. Well, not sure you should believe him. So yeah, we didn't have any interest in Emi or Todd. We did in Max, and I spoke to Max about that, and was, as always, with all our players, very honest when there's interest in them. Good or bad interest from our point of view. It's about that honest relationship, and it's about conversations about what does that mean for the club, what does it mean for the individual. We decided not to act on that interest with Max's blessing, I must add, because it was from abroad, and it wasn't quite what would have been right for him, and definitely wasn't right for us at that time. So, and it was about keeping the squad together, and Max and I've not spoken to Emi or Todd, but I'm sure they'll be exactly the same. They want to crack on and help this club try and get promoted this season. I don't think moving in January was ever a topic for them guys. We're top of the league and going pretty well. It might be different if we're 15th in the Championship and they had offers to go and join whoever in the Premier League. That might be different, and I understand that. But the fact is, as a club, we've stuck by all of our players. All of our players have sort of stuck by us, and it's a bit like, well, let's try and finish the job rather than itching to get a move for the sake of it. So I mean, if you're not careful in January, we've all seen it. There's lots of moves which can happen in January which just end up being forced through for the wrong reasons, and end up 6 months later you end up regretting them, and you think, oh, actually I might have been in a better place had I stayed at Norwich, or if I would have stayed at X club. So again, I think it's inevitable. Interest will come for them three boys that you mentioned, because they're terrific players. They're very experienced players now for their age. They've been delivering week on week for us for the last sort of 3 years, all of them. They're good pros, they're good guys. So inevitably interest will come at some point, and I've got no doubt at some point their journey here will end. And that's life, and we're very realistic about that. And when it does, we'll make sure that we get well rewarded. We'll make sure that they go to a good place, like a Ben has, or a Jamal has, or James Maddison before that, because that's part of what we do, and that's all right. But most importantly, it's about leaving. Their legacy has to be leaving Norwich in the best place it can be when that day does come to leave.
I mean, Daniel, I recall when the Arsenal Buendia thing blew up, he almost went on the front foot and said, look, for reasons you've already stated there, it wouldn't make sense in January. But on a broader point, he said maybe a summer window is when those type of deals would happen. You only go back to the Maddison one. It suited all parties, and it got done in that summer. I mean, irrespective of the league you're in the summer, do you think things could develop if all the cards fell right for all three parties in any of those cases?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because it's part of our model, and we can't sell to players or staff. Come here, we'll give you an opportunity, we'll develop you, and if you do really well for us, we'll make sure that we play a part in helping your journey to maybe bigger and better things than us, and then stop that, because that doesn't work. It kills us when we're then trying to replace people in the future, because they'll we'll be accused of sort of lying to them or whatever. So I think inevitably that day will come. All three of them players are, very talented individuals, really good people, most importantly. And I think they've all three of them have got big futures in the game. And we want to keep them as long as possible. Of course we do. But we're also realistic. And I think one thing we can't do as a club is, if an offer is that good for them and us, we can't stand in people's way. If you take Ben Godfrey, I sat with Ben and I really didn't want him to go last summer. I really didn't, and nor did Daniel, obviously. But it's Everton. It's one of the best managers in the world. It's a club who are obviously, if you look at the stadium redevelopment plans, they're trying to become, back to maybe what they were in the late 80s. As a big club in, at the top end of English football, and eventually get to the point of how can we actually stop this lad? Because if we would have stopped him going, it's not only the effect it has on Ben and the people around him, it's the effect it has on the rest of the dressing room, who go, wow, they turned down X for you to go there. That means they'll probably do it to me. And it causes that, it can cause ill feeling. And I think what we've done well over the years, long before I was here as well, by the way, because if you look at Redmonds and people like that have moved in the past, but, there's always another hero. I remember when we sold Johnny Alson and everyone was, moaning about me doing that. And it's like, well, there'll be a new hero. And later that summer, it's James Maddison. 6 months later, and everyone's going Johnny who? Or, when Wes left, Wes is a legend at this club, but now everyone's like comparing Emi to him. So there's always a new hero, and one day Emi will leave, and there'll be a version of him. And I think that's, you have to take emotion out of it when you're running it, and sort of always, plan for these departures, because at some point they happen. It's inevitable. It's the same with Daniel. I've always said it. Daniel will go and be a head coach in the Champions League, and if Borussia Dortmund came for him this summer, or Everton or something like that, the same rules apply there. Of like, well, it gets to the point of you've got to let people go, and you've got to let people develop, because that's what we promise them when they come here. What we can't do is we can't pay people massive money. We can't give them the structure of what you'd get at a massive club. We give them the opportunity to develop and work with freedom to try and get to the next level. When that next level comes, we can't then just say, no, that doesn't work. But what we can do, and I had this conversation with a couple of the younger boys last summer, is, with a great respect, we're not selling you to a club at the bottom of the Premier League. That's not happening. If you're going to a club who are going to be fighting for Europe, because that's the next stage of our model. Is James Maddison's, Ben Godfrey's, not, without being rude, what happened with the two Murphys or Alex Pritchard, because that pains me, to be honest. Some people go, oh, unbelievable deals. It's like, well, actually, no, that's not what we want. We want to produce players who can go and play in the Champions League, not ones who end up being sub in the Championship. That's not. We don't have any pride in that. And that's what we say to our young boys here: is when you're ready to move, when it's right, we'll know it's right. And contrary to probably people's beliefs, we talk to our players and we have good relationships with them and their families, because they're like our kids. I remember Max sat in my office giving him a bollocking of his life when he was 16, 17, because he'd done something wrong in college or whatever it was. He's someone you go on that journey with, and you actually want him to end up at the right place. And we have to play our part in that. And obviously, more importantly, he does by performing on the pitch. But yeah, we have to be realistic.